ahead and get started. And as people join, Michelle will let them in. Thrilled to see everyone. It is my honor to welcome you to Mosaic's 12th annual Healthy Minds, Healthy Bodies 5K run, walk, crawl, dance, anything you like, as long as you move, as Lara says. And this is our second consecutive virtual event, which I find quite amazing. We are really have gotten through an amazing year, and I just personally want to say thank you all for everything you do for Mosaic, staff, board, vendors, and certainly our special guests. Thank you so much in advance for participating in this 5K. We look forward to your photos. We wish you luck in whichever version of it. You literally can walk. I think Marty walked in his living room last year. Whatever it is that you see fit to serve your 5K, we will welcome. For this evening's Zoom event, it's my privilege to introduce two sports legends. And I really have to say it's such an exciting thing for those of us at Mosaic to have as a part of our support mental health activists who are also phenomenal athletes. And they are our honorary co-starters this year. In alphabetical order, first, my friend David Cohn. David is a former all-star pitcher for the Mets and the Yankees, so it includes both New York fans. And he's a commentator in the Yankees telecast for the Yes Network. For the past several years, he and his family have been extraordinarily generous supporters of Mosaic, truly making a difference in our programs that mean to the world, to the people of all ages who receive Mosaic services. Thank you so much, David. Appreciate it beyond words. And next, I'm delighted to welcome Shamiqua Holtzclaw. Shamiqua is quite simply one of the greatest basketball players any of us has ever seen. A star at Tennessee and in the WNBA, Shamiqua was a 2018 Women's Basketball Hall of Fame inductee and is an outspoken advocate for mental health care and eliminating the stigma of mental illness. I'm pleased to say that Shamiqua is the newest member of Mosaic's board of directors. Welcome, David and Shamiqua, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So let's get the ball rolling, pun intended. By the way, I have a speechwriter. He's a very accomplished journalist. I'll ask David and Shamiqua a couple of questions, and then we'll have each of them respond to the questions you provide in a chat section. So I want you to start thinking about questions. This is a kind of incredible opportunity to talk to these legends directly about anything that you're curious about them professionally, personally, how they've managed to do these amazing things that they've done in their lives. I'm going to start with Shamiqua. Shamiqua, how did your family background and your own experience lead to you becoming a leader among athletes and everyone in the area of mental health?
I think for me, growing up, I had two parents that struggled with addiction issues. And so early on, I experienced childhood trauma. Me and my brother being taken away from my mom and having to leave, a middle class area to go live in Astoria housing projects. It was sensory overload. It was a lot different. For me being so young, for them to tell me my household, my mom and dad was dysfunctional was something I really didn't understand. So I would say at the young age of 11 years old, I started having, struggles, battles with depression and anxiety. And luckily my grandmother, she was very aware and connected with me. She was able to, try to navigate to get me help. Along the way with my journey, I would say, I found out later that my dad struggled with schizophrenic disorder. So a lot of the drinking was him masking, his mental health issues. And so when I found that all out, and I now am going through my challenges in college, I just wanted to create a shift. I mean, as far as my family, generationally, just saying, hey, we can't sweep this under the rug anymore. We have to like talk about these things. And for me personally, at first, being an athlete, it wasn't received well. Of course, people said I was crazy because of the stigma and things. But Coach Summit, my Hall of Fame coach, she told me, if you believe in something and you gotta hold firm. You have to stay consistent with your message, and I've done so. And I see how it has changed my life as well as others.
Wow. Thank you so much, Shamikwa. That's really incredible. And, I thank your grandma, and your parents were very brave, and you are a real role model. Someday I'd love for you to come and talk to some of the children whom we serve, because not only would they be in awe of your athleticism and your experience, but you're a local gal, and they could really identify with you, and you would give them a lot of hope for the future. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank
you. David, I'm going to turn to you. How would you describe your view of mental health back when you were starting out as a professional athlete? And then today as a different kind of public figure and as a parent?
Yes, it's taken a lot to get over the stigma of asking for help. Just the simple task of, I'm hurting, I have issues, I need somebody to talk to, because it was viewed as a weakness, especially in, the macho world of Major League Baseball. If you showed up in the trainer's room with an injury, it was hard enough to say, hey, I'm physically injured, much less emotionally injured. You didn't even broach that topic back in the early 80s or even in the 1990s when I was active as a player. My career kind of spanned from the 80s and the 90s. I'm an 80s and 90s product. And so, yes, I've seen a lot of progress now. I had a teammate of mine, his name is Zach Greinke. He's a great pitcher. He's still active. He pitches for the Kansas City Royals at one point, and the Arizona Diamondbacks. But he was one of the first ball players to go in and admit that he had issues and problems. And he actually he had a social anxiety disorder. And if you can imagine, when you're trying to make your living in public in front of 50,000 fans, and I know Shamikwa understands this, when you have to perform live in an arena in front of fans, he would just tense up and get tremendous distress. And I saw it firsthand, and he really opened my eyes as to, this is not a weakness. Mm-hmm. This kid needs help. And so we started to see the culture change to where, for the better. It's still been a slow process, but nowadays it's okay. It's okay to ask for help. And 1985, it was not. And so yes, progress has been made. I've seen it, and I've been a part of it, and on the Major League Baseball level, and I applaud it. So the work is never done. Mosaic's work is never done. You've done such great work, and you, in some ways, you're still just scratching the surface. So I applaud everybody involved here. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of this tonight.
Great, thank you, David. Yeah, I think when you think about, here we are, we're in the 2020s. And I would say that a lot of major athletes have come forward to destigmatize mental health issues, and I hope that it will continue. And I think the two of you are leading the way. Another question for both of you: what role do you see athletics and physical fitness having in the effort to achieve optimal mental health? How do those things help with mental health? Shamikwa, want to start?
I just know for a long time, I think it was like a separation. You look at the athlete, the physical part of it, then you had the mental side. And I think now we're realizing, in order to achieve optimal health, we have to have them both. It's no separation. It's all together. And I've seen over the course of, last 10, 15 years, going to the colleges and universities, as well as some of the pro teams, I see like a change. Like, people are really starting to take this serious. They're allowing a safe place for the student athletes as well as the athletes to talk about these things and not be judged. Yes, you have the stigma, but I think the real shift is understanding that this is just one thing. It's just making this machine. If you want this machine, you have to take care of all the parts, and supplying these young people and these athletes with resources. I think that's the key, you know. And I know sometimes someone's going to look at it and they're going to be like, "No, man," you know, or a woman, "Oh, no, I'm not going to do that." But just so they can see it, they can see that it's there, because they may not approach it when around a team or organization, but they may, you know, find an outlet on their own. You know, I think for myself, I was so afraid to talk about those things, but I always tell people it was Catherine. I always get, like, not Catherine Zeta Jones, it's Captain Zeta Jones. That was the first person that I attached to, and I realized when I realized she had struggled with bipolar disorder, and she was so open about it. So, like we just said a second ago, storytelling is healing, and giving people a lot of courage to move forward.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up to that, Shamikwa. When you were, I'm assuming, playing basketball in high school, did you start, how was playing ball a release for you? Or what did it do for you in terms of the physical part of it? What did it do for you mentally?
Oh, the physical part was great, but mentally it was my escape. It was my safe place, you know, the place that I can go, and all the problems I was dealing with, as far as, you know, missing my parents or adjusting to a new neighborhood. That's when I felt free. That's when I felt like, oh man, this is my happy space. And so I know for a lot of people, that's what sports does. You know, it's a great distraction, but the thing is that it's only going to last being a distraction, you know, that good feeling for so long. You know, you have to address the issues at hand, and we can talk about that, you know, all day. I'm gonna leave that right there, because I think, you know, especially with the young people, you know, we know that there are a lot of people, we know, especially being athletes, and when they recruit them in college, these coaches and stuff, they're going in their homes, they're around these young people. And so when they start to see these behavior shifts, they have to be more diligent in making sure that they get the help that they need, you know, because they are trusting, their parents or guardians are trusting these coaches and universities and colleges with these kids. And so I think now, you know, more people are talking about it, and even in the media, more news people are covering it in a proper and responsible way.
Right. Yes, I think that is absolutely spot on. David, could you answer that question? What role do you see athletics and physical fitness having in the effort to achieve optimal mental health?
Well, yes. I mean, the problem I have with that I personally had with athletics, and it was my whole identity was wrapped up in the athlete, the player. You know, and my whole self-worth was wrapped up in how good of a ball player I was, and whether I was successful, and did we win or lose. And then when I retired and got out of the game, that was the toughest part for me, because my whole identity was wrapped up in who, you know, David Cohn, the pitcher. And you know, the thing that is missing is, you know, the empathy factor, the part about, you know what, we need a more empathetic industry. We need people who have a better understanding of what people go through, not just athletes, but everybody. You know, do you have somebody you can turn to that has an empathetic ear? And that's where Mosaic comes in, right? I mean, that's what you guys do. So you'd be surprised, just something as simple as that, having somebody who you feel like has empathy for your plight, whatever that is. It matters. Now, of course, one thing leads to another. If you're hurting or you're struggling, then the last thing you want to do is go out and work out or have physical activity or take care of yourself. That's the last thing that you want to do, right? Anybody who's going through anything, geez, I don't want to get out of bed today, all right?
Right.
Much less am I going to go jogging or go down to the gym or do what's necessary to take care of yourself. Am I going to eat right? So yeah, one thing leads to the next, but it really starts with empathy.
Right.
and being around empathetic people who understand that no matter what your problems are, sometimes you just need somebody to listen and understand. And it's just, Shamiko understands this. Sometimes when you're in the bubble of a professional industry, especially athletics, you show that kind of weakness, it's not allowed. It's not acceptable.
Well, and so some ways what you're talking about is the fact that the stigma is even greater because there's an expectation that somehow you guys are superhuman and are above the, we mere mortals in terms of how we struggle, right? And I think really what both of you are saying is, yes, any kind of athletic, physical activity gets the blood flowing and the good hormones flowing, but without a mental health perspective in check, it's hard to stay motivated and the pressure is even greater when you are at a level where you have to perform. And I think, it's interesting. I think it's the great equalizer, our mental health. Money can't buy it. Physical prowess can't buy it. It is something that we all struggle with and share both, and it's on a continuum. And I think that that's something that is so valuable, particularly for folks who have achieved at such a high level. People look up to you guys and they listen, and there's something I think for the young people, especially our team board who are on, to hear such accomplished professional athletes say, don't be afraid to ask for help. I've been there, I know what it's like. And there are folks out there like people at Mosaic who are here to do just that. So I before we move on to the questions to the whole group to ask, I have one last question that I'd like both of you to answer. We'll start with David this time. What have been the biggest adjustments for you in moving on from careers as world-class athletes? You kind of started to say that,
yes,
David.
No, it is. It's difficult. It's such a one-dimensional life. When you dedicate yourself your whole life to one thing, this is what I choose to do, and I'm sure Shamiko has a similar story. The work it took for her to be as good as she had to be, world class, one of the best in the world, a Hall of Famer, in order to be a top shelf athlete, then you forego everything else in your life. And your whole mentality is almost just narrow-minded, a very, as I said, one-dimensional life. And so that's where the identity crisis comes, when that's no longer there. My safe haven was on the pitcher's mound at Yankee Stadium. When I was on that pitcher's mound at Yankee Stadium, I was on center stage, and that was the only time I was happy. That was the only time I really felt fulfilled. And then when that was gone, I was lost. And I had to sort of, what am I going to do now? And it's a similar story for a lot of athletes. That's why you see a lot of ex-players in all sports end up bankrupt, in trouble, depression. You'd be surprised. I mean, there multi-millions have been made in careers and lost. And, a lot of it has to do with that identity crisis. When I get out of the game, you compensate. Well, I'm going to spend all this money. You'd be surprised, how the money goes in a hurry. And so it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. So it's a common story. There's a common thread there for all of us to have that balance, because you get out of whack because of the commitment it takes to be the best in your profession.
Yes, that's absolutely spot on. Shamiko, do you want to jump on that with David?
I think David definitely nailed it. I think that what he said is a conversation amongst many of the athletes. I mean, all sports. this is the same thing. I think for me too, one of the things I miss being an athlete, you're coached, every corner of my life that I needed help in, and there was someone there. And then when the ball stopped, it's like, okay, those people are kind of like disappearing. You hit a little rocky road. Those people are really gone. And it's just trying to find out your identity. Like David said, like, who am I? Also realizing, okay, for my path, if I'm going to be an entrepreneur and not necessarily having that structure, having a little more freedom in my life, I miss the structure and the discipline. So it's sort of like, for me, I have to go work extra hard with my therapist and making sure that I'm planning out my days, making sure that I'm organized. So I'm just not sort of free floating. And I also, one of the things I really miss, and I didn't realize how much I was going to miss this about sports, I miss the sisterhood. I miss the camaraderie with my teammates. As you know, David, there's those teammates you love, and there's those ones that you don't like so much. But it's like a built-in family. I mean, anything we do, right? We have those that we're disconnected with, those that we're not so much connected with. But I just miss navigating that, the sisterhood. And so over the quarantine, I know me, I'm a social person. I reached back out to old teammates, that people I haven't spoke to for years. And they're like, oh my God, like, I didn't expect this call. And I was like, you know what? Like, we were teammates 5 or 6 years. How are you doing? And that, I realized in doing that, it really helped me kind of move through this.
That's fantastic. Well, yeah, I see a little business here for Mosaic. The post major league, whatever sport you're in, counseling
Center.
And I see my controller nodding like, yes, that'll bring in some good money.
Yeah.
We can work something out. Baseball and basketball we could start with. Shamiqua, I was the shortest forward in my league, and we were really not a good team. But I love basketball. So now we're going to start with questions from everyone, and I'd like them submitted via the chat, and then I will have maybe. Yeah, Michelle, if you could read them, that would be fantastic. Or Willie, whomever.
Sure. There's a question on the floor for both Shamiqua and for David. What advice would you give to your young selves? And that's not to say you're not still young, but when you were very young, as in starting out and young professionals, what advice, looking back, would you now give to those former selves of yours?
I'll defer to Shamiqua, so that
she's the youngest.
Wow. Some steal her answer.
I'll probably just say, like, slow down, grasshopper. I think everything was happening like so fast. I don't think I really got to enjoy the moments. And for me, it's sad to say, like, I don't remember so much about my career. And I have a lot of friends who are coaches, and they'll remind me of youth camps or times at colleges, and they remember it so vividly. And I'm like, oh my God, like, did that really happen? Because I think a lot of it too, I think the whole my bipolar diagnosis, I think I was always like in the high. I was just like always chasing it. And I don't think I really ever truly like felt like with a certain stillness. And so I definitely would just like to take it back and just really appreciate where I am, and not looking like so far ahead, just really enjoying the people and the moments that were happening.
David?
That's so true, because when Shamiqua, when I look back at my career, I remember the losses more than the wins. All the highs, I mean, it's, I pitched a game in Seattle in 1995 that we lost, and I threw like 147 pitches, and I almost collapsed on the mound after the game, and we ended up losing that game. And George Steingritter, our owner, ended up firing everybody. People lost jobs over that game. And that's a whole nother show for another time. Steingritter stories. So, but
that could be a mini fundraiser.
Yeah, that's right.
I have a lot of them. But yeah, I totally relate to what Shamiqua was saying there, is that, I don't remember the good stuff sometimes. I remember the bad stuff. And it's because of that constant push the constant, there's a game, then the next game to the next game, and the next year. And then when it's over, there's the void. Then the big void comes. And if I was to go back, there's this great movie. I think probably most of you have probably seen it, The Shawshank Redemption.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Morgan Freeman in that movie has a great scene at the end. It's his last parole hearing, and he finally just says, "Screw it." You want to know what I think? I don't even know who that young man was, but if I could go back and talk to that young man, I would tell him, first of all, would he listen to me? Would the young me listen to the old me? So that's the first thing. But and I'm paraphrasing from that scene in that movie, but it was so touching to me because it's like, you want to know what I think? Yeah, I'd like to go back and have a talk with that kid, and I'd like to, I'd like to try to give him some advice and tell him what to look out for, and tell him, to watch out for the pitfalls and to watch out for these things that are coming your way, and to try to guide him and protect him. There's so many things I'd love to talk to myself about, the young me at 19. I know exactly the day I'd like to go back to, because the mistakes along the way. I know I could give you the day when I was 19 years old on March 23rd of 1982. I know that day.
Give it up, give it up.
I'm gonna go right before that day, because there was a series of mistakes that were made after that I would like to try to stop, and I wonder if he would listen. I still do.
Wow.
Before I move on to the next two questions, something David touched on reminded me of the famous Billie Jean King expression, "Pressure is a privilege." And I was wondering if each of you could describe what you thought of pressure when you were a competitive athlete and what you think of pressure today. How about you, David, to start?
Well, to me, pressure, as I got more experience into my career, I viewed it more as an opportunity than pressure. It comes down to perspective. My father worked the graveyard shift in a meat packing plant, and I grew up very low. I mean, nothing was given. I had everything I needed. So I'm not complaining, but I saw how hard he worked, and every time he came home from the graveyard shift, I would be, "Dad, let's go play catch. Come on, Dad, let's go." And he always said yes. So I never forgot that. And so whenever somebody asked me, boy, pressure of pitching at Yankee Stadium, I always said, you know what? Pressure was going to work the graveyard shifts in the meatpacking plant. That's pressure. Supporting a family. So to me, it's about perspective, and dealing with pressure. But yeah, I mean, I still got nervous when I performed. I still felt an accountability to my teammates, and I know Shamika probably feels the same way, but you take on that responsibility that, the fans, the team, the organization, your family, you certainly, that all comes into play. So yeah, you do feel that sort of pressure, but for me, it was about perspective. There's people really struggling in this world, especially now.
Yeah.
So whether I win or lose this damn baseball game, really, in the grand scheme of things, that's not really pressure.
Man, David, just like you're hitting everything perfectly. I mean, it's pressure, but it's almost like a happy pressure. And I looked at it the same way. When I was getting these opportunities, I just thought about my friends back home, in Astoria housing projects and surrounding area that didn't get these opportunities. And for me, it was like carrying that flag, that ray of hope, that, hey, I can go create these opportunities so that I can, help them see that they can do the same thing. So I never felt like any pressure. It was just like relishing in the moment and enjoying it.
Shamika, the next question that one of the participants tonight offered is the notion of depression after a high, such as the Olympics or another major accomplishment or opportunity. What experiences did you have after such great experiences?
Wow. So, oh man, that's great. As I started, getting a little older and experiencing that trauma of losing my grandmother, I was like 23, 24. then it's like my world started to change. And so, yes, I would go out there. I'm having these highs. I'm experiencing winning Olympic gold. All these great things are happening. But then it was like I would go home, and all of a sudden I felt like so alone. I felt like no one understood the things that I was going through internally, and that allowed me to really start to isolate. I really started like isolating myself. Um, I felt like everyone would know my secrets, and so it was just like working hard, towards like pleasing my team, pleasing the fans. But internally, I was just all over the place. I could turn it on. I call myself the perfect people pleaser. I can turn it on and go do my job. But it was when I left that court and I'm alone by myself trying to navigate and deal with those emotions that I wasn't good at. I just sort of fell apart.
David, I'm going to ask you a follow-up on that. One of the questions that we in journalism like to ask people is, what was the low? And we just talked for a minute with Shamiqua about the lows after the highs of accomplishment and opportunity. For you, what were some of the lows after those opportunities, and how did you deal with them?
Yeah, well, Shamika's got it exactly right. I mean, I'm very similar in that, I isolated as well. It was the position I played, the pitcher, the baseball pitcher on the mound. We're kind of alone as it is. You're out there in the middle of the diamond by yourself, and you perform and you hear the cheers. And then when you go home, you're like, I just want to just decompress. I just want to get out of it for a while. And then that becomes a habit. Next thing you know, I don't really want to be around people. I don't really like people. I don't, and then you end up turning it on and off. Okay, let me turn. Is it time for me to be on? I think this is hard for people around you to understand. Your family or your friends or even your significant other. It's sort of like there's two different personas. There's the baseball player who puts on the uniform and goes and deals with the media and deals with the public nature of the job, and then the light switch goes off when you go home, and then you're like, leave me the F alone. I don't want to be around anybody. And that becomes habit, and that's the dangerous part. That's kind of the slippery slope where you go down this rabbit hole and you can't get yourself out.
Thank you. And the next question from the group is an interesting one. We'll start with Shamiqua. Shamiqua, in what ways did your mental health affect your performance? And in what ways did your performance affect your mental health?
Wow, I've heard this question before. I think my mental health really helped my performance because it was the time, like when I was out there on the court, I was able to like get this razor sharp focus. And it was the time where I didn't think about what was going on in my life, the problems, the issues, the stresses, nothing. I was just like really locked in. But I also think, always needing to be in that space, like that was like my one outlet. I didn't feel at the time I had like anybody who really understood what I was going through. So when I left that space of that safety net, I felt like that's when it really started, the physical part of it, coming down from that high really started to affect my mental health in a negative way, because I just, I'm achieving these things, I'm locked in, I have this focus and it feels good. But again, when I step away from that, and I talk to people close to me, my cousin who was really close, and say, I'm dealing with these things. How can you be sad? How can you say that you're depressed when you have achieved these success? Like you made it out of the environment, like you're such a strong person. And imagine that. Imagine you feeling like you can't be vulnerable. Imagine if you feel like you have to be strong all the time. So that's when things just really started, I would say a shift started changing. I started changing as a person, just the level of trust. I felt like, who can I trust with this? David spoke about something, and to backtrack a second, you talked about empathy. Through all the things that I was going through, I just didn't suffer by myself. Going to talk to a member of the staff and say, hey, I'm feeling a little different. I feel like I'm depressed. I can't get out of it. You know, I don't feel back then I was met with a kindness and an understanding. You know, no one ever put their hand on my shoulder, unfortunately, and said, hey, you know what, I'm going to help you through this. It was more looked at as a negative, or other teammates finding out and coming back, girl, they said that you were going crazy. It was really, really tough for me. So that caused me to really just go into a ball and try to deal with things myself. Imagine that when you're not in the right mind, trying to process all of this. It was something that was really heavy.
David, would you like to add something?
Yeah, no, it's the success is fleeting, you know, even though you reach the pinnacle, you know, for me, it was, you know, I threw a perfect game on July 18th, 1999. And the adrenaline rush that I got in that particular moment was incredible. I could feel my head on fire, you know, from the adrenaline rush. But then when I went home, and then the next day, in the following week after that, there was a tremendous crash and burn. And that was one of the first times in my life where I realized that my whole identity was tied up in my performance. And, you know, and that even if I reached the top of the mountain, everything I chased, you know, everything you worked for, everything you wanted, once I got there, it was like, wow, this is all there is. This is what I got. And, you know, it's not what I thought it was. And so what now? And that was towards the end of my career. So that led me into, when I got into retirement, kind of a little bit of a letdown, a free fall, an identity crisis. So, you know, I completely agree with Shamiqua in that regard, that it really helps if you've got somebody to talk to and say, you know what, I've been there, I've done that, I know what you're going through. Simple, little things can go a long way. And if you feel like, you know what, oh yeah, you did this and you went through this, and it's okay. You're not alone. And you'd be surprised how far that could go. Something as simple as that.
In a moment, I'm going to turn this back over to Donna. But before I do that, I want to say thank you to both of you very much and ask one more question, because here in New York recently, the Mets' highest paid player, a signee this offseason, Francisco Lindor, has gotten off to a rocky start, and he's been booed. And that's something that he is not used to. So as we wrap up, I was just wondering how each of you has coped with being booed and fans criticizing you, because in the course of our normal, regular lives, we don't have to deal with anything like that. So what's it been like for you guys, and how did you deal with it?
You can go first, David. He mentioned the baseball player. So.
At first, not very well. I mean, you learn, you adapt as you go. You know, you don't, I think one of the keys that you learn is not to take yourself so seriously. And that's the lesson that I try to teach young athletes. You know, even on the Yankees, when they come and talk to me about dealing with the media or dealing with fans, and really it's the media in New York, that, you know, if you're in front of your locker after a game, win, lose, or draw, and you're a stand-up person and you deal with it, no matter what comes your way, you're much better off than being the type of player that is in front of your locker when you had a great game and you're ready to talk. Hey, I threw a no-hitter. I scored 40 tonight. I dropped 40. Hey, come talk to me. I'm great tonight. And then when you have a bad game, you run and hide in the trainer's room. That's the formula for disaster.
Right.
So if you don't take yourself so seriously, and on those nights when you have a bad game and you're like, yeah, hey, I'm honest. Hey, I sucked tonight. Simple as that. I had a bad game. I'm human. I'll bounce back. It's as simple as that can really go a long way, at least based on my experience, as opposed to the one, you know, if you do take yourself too seriously, then you're the person that becomes kind of the up and down, you know, to where it leads to inconsistency, and that sort of inconsistency leaks into everything you do, and the way you think and the way you approach life, really.
Yeah.
Right. David, I'm sitting here, I'm smiling because I had a moment like that when I first came to the WNBA. You know, I had a great college coach, probably one of the best in basketball. And I remember us losing this tough game, and I was so upset. And I didn't want to deal with the media, and I ran to the training room. And I remember my teammate was like, "No, you got to get back out here." And I went back out there, and I handled the interview with grace and in class. But I remember then having to talk to my therapist. He was the therapist for the Baltimore Orioles at the time. I think it's the Baltimore Orioles. And he told me, he goes, "You know what's going to help you, Shaniqua?" He goes, "You're a perfectionist. You put a lot of pressure on yourself." He goes, "Don't read an article don't read about it. You live it, don't care about what people write about you. Just get that out of your head." And honestly, from a competitive standpoint and learning how to de-stress, it helped me so much. I never was, they give out stats. I never looked at stats. I never read articles about myself. It totally changed the way that I was able to absorb like the negativity.
That's great.
Thank you.
We call that a coping strategy, and it's actually a very, very good one. I want to say thank you so much, David and Shaniqua, for being so vulnerable with us and sharing your stories. Clearly, the two of you are living happy, productive lives, and we didn't get to talk about, the post. But we're so thrilled to have you both on our team, and I'm personally so moved by what you both have shared. And every one of us on this call has had some version of an up and a down and an isolating moment and a rough time and having to ask for help. So, as we say in Mosaic, we're all in this together. We're here for you. Thank you for being there for us. And we look forward to the relationships deepening. I want to thank our board co-chairs, Lara Holtz and Dick Conley. You guys have been amazing. Personally, I want to thank you. You've been amazing through the pandemic. I couldn't ask for more supportive bosses. The 5K committee, you guys are the best. And Michelle, you have been so patient and so supportive and so competent. And we really appreciate everything that you do. We are hoping that this will be our most successful 5K in history. And the only way that that's going to happen is if over the next month you spread the word and ask for donations for your walk, run, dance, crawl, wiggle, whatever it is you're going to do. I want to shout out to Ponce Bank and Wanda, who's on the call. They've made a contribution where hi Wanda. We have changed from the big banks to Ponce. We are thrilled. They gave us the PPP twice. And we had gotten rejected by Chase Bank. Just want to go on record saying that again. And so we are delighted with our partnership, and they gave us a nice check on Friday, and we appreciate it so much, Wanda. Thank you, thank you. And I just also want to say to all of you that we are doing something very special here. Not only are we serving over 1,000 families in the Bronx, but we really are making a difference in terms of the stigma of mental illness. And I've been at this for a while, and I have to say it's a really proud moment for me to have Shaniqua and David with us, speaking about their challenges and supporting what we do. And I hope that just continues to grow. We look forward to all your photos of your walks, runs, whatever it is you do. And again, welcome again to Layla's beautiful son. And we're so thrilled to have you on. That's pretty awesome. He's only a few weeks old. And thank you to my team, Mosaic, I see Eileen, and I see Edith, and I see Lori, and I see Susie, and Dr. Felix Allen was on there somewhere, and Sylvia, and all the board members. Really thank you for everything you do. Myra and I, well, we love you.
We
and
love you.
Thank
Can
you.
I, just before everyone
And-
jumps off, can I just quickly say,
Please.
if you would like an opportunity to walk 5K with Laurie and myself and other mums for mental health, please join us. Please join us Friday morning at 9 a.m. in Van Cortlandt. We will be walking as a community in the neighborhood. So we're calling it Mums for Mental Health, but anyone can obviously join. Shamiqua, we would love to see you and your family if you would like to come. But please, it's a good way to get the walking done.
And I want to say thank you to our team board. You guys are wonderful. I see a few of you on tonight as well. Thank you, thank you. I will. Hi, Ginger. Hi. So that concludes our evening. Please make sure that you check out our website. Go on, get your friends and family to go on and support Mosaic and the work we do. And thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you.